Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise, and we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer, dear listener, my name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe, your host of this wonderful and powerful show, Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. The show we try to energize, enthuse and empower you in different ways as an entrepreneur. And I brought someone this time who is going to do just that, Mpho Kgosietsile. She's going to share issues from her company, Wise Leadership, having to do with championing accountable corporate culture, something that we need badly here in Botswana. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Mr. Mogobe, and thank you for this opportunity.
It's a privilege, it's an honor, and thank you. Our previous relationship was that of a landlord and a tenant. Now is that of an interviewer and a guest.
Yes.
So you're most welcome. Would you like to share your background?
I'm a corporate governance consultant, practitioner, qualified with MSc Corporate Governance, and I'm also a fellow of the Chartered Governance Institute of Southern Africa, which is previously Chartered Institute of Administrators and Secretaries. With 20 years, almost 20 years now, experience on the field with corporate governance advisory, with company formations in corporations and administration, compliance, statutory compliance thereafter. Having started my career at the Register of Companies then, which is called SIPA now.
Yes.
And having learned the ropes of company administration and consciously choosing the path to be a corporate governance practitioner now in the private sector.
Okay. And you have a company called Wise Leadership. Tell us about that company.
Wise Leadership initially is also by virtue of qualification is a company secretarial and corporate governance practice where we have, it is designed to facilitate a corporate governance culture in Botswana. First by providing advisory to the boards, being a company secretary of note in terms of being that confidential board, sounding board for the boards, for the directors, aligning the relationships between management and the directors, being that conduit in between, and of course being accountable to the board. So we do a lot under the corporate governance perspective, being advisory on the King codes on corporate governance or any other code or standard that may be out there that a particular client would want us to look at, or even us looking at it in terms of our focus or objective in advisory. Regulatory environment as well in this particular instance would be the Botswana regulatory environment, and also the other regulatory environments that we find our companies in other jurisdictions as well. That would be, you have a company which is listed in the Botswana Stock Exchange, having in the London Stock Exchange, for example, having a subsidiary in Botswana, and it's probably listed in the Botswana Stock Exchange. So that connection, we also look into it, into saying, are our companies really aligned to the demands, statutory requirements of the jurisdiction they're in, without also losing the group connection that needs to be there. So we do work in terms of aligning the codes that are being used, the governance codes that are being used, making sure that we develop the governance frameworks that are needed for every company, for every board. That would include board charters, constitutions, terms of references, providing advisory on a day-to-day basis as well. In the company, also doing integrated reporting and facilitating integrated reporting, which is a new thing. I'm singling it out because it's one of those things that now all companies are required to do. We are moving from the annual report to the integrated report. There's also high concentration or focus on risk. There's also high focus on compliance. So those are the things that we look at on the whole. And also generally providing now the corporate secretarial suite where we are outsourced company secretaries doing what every in-house company secretaries would do and more.
Yeah, to a layman, company secretarial work involves just taking notes during board meetings. But I'm sure you are here to tell us it's a lot more than that. First of all, can you, disabuse us of this notion that it's a mere secretarial work where you just record minutes and then tell us what is now, because it's a whole profession on its own now. It's been for some decades.
Yes. A company secretarial position is a C-suite kind of position. You are the advisor. You report of the board. You report to the chairman of the board and the board itself. Functionally and administratively to align, you would also report to the CEO or the managing director. Company secretary is different from secretarial. Secretarial is just taking notes and recording whatever it is that would be discussed. But a company secretary has to be armed with corporate governance advisory. They are now called corporate governance practitioners. A qualified and experienced company secretary is called a corporate governance practitioner. So there's definitely at this point now no separation between corporate governance and corporate secretarial. So, however, the things that a company secretary would do would be to continuously provide advice to the board in terms of corporate governance, in terms of compliance, in terms of risk, in terms of strategy. So a fully rounded company secretary would know all those aspects of the business. They would know what legal is doing. They would know what administration is doing. They would know what operations is doing. Because at the end of it all, they have to be able to put those together and make sense of them. When there's a strategy session, they have to sit there. So this is a well-rounded person who you can put anywhere, I would say, in an organization and can still be able to share with you what the organization is all about. This is also the person who is the liaison between the directors, the management, the shareholders, the stakeholders. So this is the position that it is. It's no longer just about writing notes. We have gone through that. It's somebody who has to make sure that information and reports that go to the board have integrity. Having come from management, before you pass them on to the board, you have to look at them.
Who is Judge King or Advocate King, and how did he come to occupy such a seemingly central role in this profession?
Professor Mervyn King is what I would call the expert or the go-to person regarding corporate governance in the world and in our spectrum. I would say also in Botswana, in Southern Africa. He has been very instrumental in developing the codes of governance in Botswana. And I mean, in Botswana he has been consulted, but generally the one that we talk about most is the King Codes on Corporate Governance. He has been sitting as the chair of that committee, the King Code Committee, for a long time, since King 1 was developed up until now being the chair emeritus. So he has provided guidance in terms of...
So we're now on King number what?
4. We are now on King 4. And he has provided guidance all these years. Him being a judge, of course, bringing that expertise, of course, of legal background as well. And he is also very instrumental in developing in the International Integrated Reporting Council. Therefore, the integrated report that we are talking about as well is critical. All those come from what I would call the world best practice in terms of corporate governance. So that is the person that we are talking about, also being an author of other corporate governance books as well.
And tell us, from King 1 to King 4, what are the main changes that you've seen come up on?
Yeah.
Or what are the main distinctions?
Originally, King 1 and King 2 were mostly based on trying to, remember these are South African products. They were basically, they were mostly based on trying to get South Africa out of the apartheid era into a position of business where the world can now relate with. So this is where they were coming from. So the intention was to draft or to have something in place that companies outside the world can relate with, that also the South African environment can also follow to align itself with the outside world. And King 3 and King 4 now are developments as they come through internationally, because now we are talking more about sustainability, we are talking more about integrating issues regarding the environment, the societal and the governance issues in terms of reporting, even in terms of our day-to-day running of business. So as the King codes went up from 3 to 4, that is what we see mostly now in terms of development. And they are very much aligned to the other corporate governance codes around the world.
Okay. To what extent does all this tie up with the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs?
Yes. The integrated report should actually include the Sustainable Development Goals as part of every intent of every company. Hence the mention of the environmental, the societal, and the governance issues. Therein you would find aspects of them in the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So every company now, through the integrated report, is required to place itself first as a corporate citizen, and a responsible corporate citizen for that matter, in terms of saying in the way that we do our business, we are aware of the society that we are operating in, we are aware of the environment that we are operating in. We are also aware of the fact that we are not only just there to do business. Our governance structures are in place, our governance processes are in place, and we are aware of other stakeholders as well who are at play in this. Therefore, we do also have a strategy and a business model within the company, and we are integrating all those into one thing, which we want the world to know about. Critical for the investor, critical for the shareholder, and critical for anyone who would want to do business with you in the future.
Wonderful. You've been at it for 10 years, at least Wise Leadership has been running for 10 years. What would you say are significant challenges that you've had to grapple with, that you have to deal with on a day-to-day?
Generally, when we entered the market, corporate governance was a by-the-way kind of thing with the Botswana market. My experience, or having maybe studied my MSc in the UK before, that was the thing even then. But with us on the other side of the world, even 10 years earlier, it was still not the thing. It was still a by the way. And even talking about compliance was even worse. It was about ticking the boxes. Corporate governance is an umbrella, I would call, that incorporates strategy, risk, compliance, the business model. They are not inseparable. They are inseparable. So 10 years earlier, people were only concerned about the business, the profit, and that was it. Whether we comply, whether there are risks that are at play, yes, maybe there was a little bit of an eye on it, but not a total eye on it. So 10 years now, as it is in 2021, we are more than ever required as businesses and even NGOs, any establishment whatsoever, to be cognizant of the fact that corporate governance is at play and you have to be part of that play. You cannot sit now on the fence and watch. You sit on the fence, it is going to be quite expensive for you later, because there's regulation now that has joined the original notion was there are corporate governance codes and standards one needs to follow. Now there is regulation in every industry now that requires practice of good corporate governance. So there's a dynamic change.
Still on the subject of challenges, can you give an example of what can go wrong or even spectacularly wrong for companies if they lose sight of this important issue?
I would say corporate governance is now the business of the day. If it is not visible in your company, if we don't see the results, there are one issues that could come up would be penalties. Companies will lose in terms of having to pay huge penalties as required by the regulators to
BRS, for instance.
Yes, BRS, regulators would be BRS, would be SIPA. Those are like the standard, I would call. But then there's another layer, which we now talk about, which is Botswana Accountancy Oversight Authority, NB-FIRA, Bank of Botswana, and all the others. Botswana Stock Exchange, for example, I'm just naming the four key ones which are requiring their companies or companies which fall under their portfolios to adhere to best corporate governance. So if you don't adhere to that, obviously the company would be found wanting. The business would suffer. As I have mentioned initially, yes, penalties. But what also can you lose? You can lose the money that comes in, your turnover. People would not want to now do business with you if there is evidence of a bad corporate governance culture in your organization. In the long term, good corporate governance culture brings in good business performance. Hence the Mpho would define it as corporate governance as the practice of effective leadership and ethical leadership.
I know some politicians, or some not even politicians, who would think of this as over-regulation, that there are too many procedures and processes that tend to stifle business. How do you respond to such a criticism?
My response would be, have they really interrogated those things that they're talking about to be able to maybe come up with a better approach? Because the reality is regulation is here to stay. And the reality is it is not reducing, it is actually increasing. So what is it as a nation can we do to make sure that even if as it is increasing, we are ready and prepared for that? For example, right now we are talking about the grey listing that we are anticipating to be removed from, because there were loopholes in terms of maybe the way we do things. Therefore, we had to correct that. This therefore tells us that there is no way that we can be exempted from the global platform. We are part of the global platform. Therefore, yes, regulation might stifle, but what is it that we can do better in terms of Botswana? What solutions are there that we can make sure that at least we align and make things easier for us to comply?
I've heard business people complain about the hassle of these KYS requirements, your KYC, sorry,
yes,
where you are repeatedly being asked the same question every year or every 6 months, and then it's a hassle, and like you mentioned, it had led to grey listing. Isn't there a sense in which it's frustrating for you as a corporate governance practitioner?
It is frustrating, talking even at personal level, but when you get to now do it, you would find that we have been doing it. It's only that not in a structured way. when you deal with somebody, you would want their IDs, you want their proof of addresses, you would want to know their financial background if you are going into business with them, if you are your suppliers and all of that. But we probably have not been doing it in a structured way. And now the other layer would be now is even regulator, which is probably more scary, because if you don't do it right, then you are prone to being penalized. But I think once we get it right, it would be easier. Once the thing with compliance is that it's expensive not to do it. But when you do it and you start, it's a step-by-step thing. There's a point whereby you will get it right. And once you get it right, then there are benefits, because then things would run smoothly. At the end of it all, it is being required because we are now, the business spectrum has changed. We are now dealing with fraudsters. We are now dealing with people who launder money, who commit a fraud, and they want to engage you in that even as a business. At the end of it all, if you don't put your eyes on it, you are going to it's now going to be costly for you. You are right now in the middle of crime, speculation, and allegations, and you don't even know how you got there.
Okay. You mentioned King and the King structures. Are there any others that we should be looking out for? Apart from King, who else is the dominant player that guides us in this area?
Well, there are many of them, I think, also depending on jurisdiction. There is also a gentleman called Bob Tricker. For me, Bob Tricker. He's also one of the I think the oldest proponents of corporate governance. That's what I learned from him in terms of during my years as a scholar, as a student of corporate governance. There is Sir Cadbury who
Sir Cadbury.
Yes, and Turnbull, who were charged by the UK government to start looking at issues regarding corporate governance, right after the Enron issues and the other issues that came up
around
regarding
2008, 2009 meltdown.
Yes, no, Enron was like 2001. So
yes.
This thing started where we in 90 somethings, and even when we talk to Bob Tricker, it's even way before then, when nobody knew about what corporate governance is. And he's still around, yes, and haven't had, close contact or conversation with, but still following from far.
Now, still on the issue of corporate governance in Botswana, compared to other jurisdictions, as somebody who studied overseas and you have a sort of a bird's eye view of the industry. How are we managing, and how are we doing on the whole?
The prognosis is not that good, to be fair and true. I would say that we are awake now to the idea. We are awake to the demands of corporate governance as something, as a standard that we need to really adhere to. And the arrival of or the increase of regulation has caused us to be aware, very much aware, that we have to practice corporate governance, first of all as the board, as the directors, because the tone is set from the top. The organization would not do or follow that which the directors are not doing. So it is more important now than ever for Botswana to actually rise up now and cement their place in the international platform and ensure that our businesses are quite aligned to the international demands regarding corporate governance. So I would say we are going in the right direction, because at least the regulators are providing the checks and balances and to the organizations to say this is not what should be done. In fact, this is what is done. I mean, there are even penalties to that effect. So one would want, the ideal situation would have been us doing it without really being regulated.
Policed.
Yes. But this is where we are. And I always say it's a journey.
Yeah.
You cannot be 100% compliant now with whatever is demanded of you. But you can only try to take the steps in the right direction. Eventually, you will get there.
Yeah. A lot of our viewers, entrepreneurs, some of them have startups, still trying to play the role of the CEO, the accountant, and everything else in between, including the messenger. You know how it was when you started. So people in that position, if you're coming in as wise leadership to advise them, what structures would you put in place at the beginning to ensure that they don't get caught up or they don't trip up, because of these corporate governance issues?
Yes, as a small entrepreneur, just like every company, the Companies Act is your critical document to follow and to have a statutory document. You'd also want to learn the practice of wearing different hats. We have gone through it, like you say, the other time you are the CEO, the other time you are also the shareholder. But then when making decisions, you need to be able to have to be able to put on different hats. When you're putting the hat of a shareholder, there are decisions that you need to make as a shareholder. When you are putting the head of a CEO also, there are decisions that you have to make as a CEO. Also, we need to learn to practice to separate personal issues or my personal things, my money, and the company's money. The company's money is its money. So you approach it as a separate person, as the law says. You are only speaking for it, you are only advocating for it, and you are acting on its behalf. However, it doesn't mean that you can put in your hand there anytime that you want in terms of financial management and do whatever it is. If you want to grow, at some point you would have your employees. At some point you would also have suppliers, people who provide you external services as well. So you need to be able to operate with that future-centric mode to say, I want to grow, therefore I need to manage my finances quite well. I need to know that at some point I need to sit down and develop strategy. I may be alone, there may be two of us, but then I need to bring in a third person to give us a different perspective of what we may not be seeing. So you would then want to work with other people as well on the sides to help you grow. So really it's how to learn to put on different hats, and also to know what to pull when you need to. In terms of the company secretary is there for you. If you don't have a constitution, that's your constitution. That's the go-to. You don't have to be having a lot of documents, especially when business is not complex yet. So codes of governance, borrow one or two things from, start as small as you are. Eventually you will get somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the importance of having external board members? You spoke of the importance of getting advice.
Yes. External board members, I would call them independent directors. Those are directors who are not involved at all in terms of, who are not conflicted. They don't own the company. They don't even have any association or whatsoever with the shareholders. You would need that person there, especially as the business grows. So this person's importance is they're providing an independent mind to all of it. Remember, you may be conflicted. You may be, as the owner, would be thinking, this is what I want to do. Him coming in or her coming in with the expertise and experience from the external environment would give you direction in terms of, this is nowhere we are going as a world or as a nation or as a business in the industry. So you need that person to continuously, you more like bouncing off ideas from the end. They will have to tell you, they will tell you the truth and will guide you. So an independent mind in the board and an independent person who's not conflicted, or when I make this decision, does it mean that I will not be paid my board fees? And we also need to understand that as well. They get their due for them to help us do the work that needs to be done.
Okay, so does Wide Leadership offer specific services in that regard? And if so, can you enlighten us more specifically what you can do for these startups or for these relatively small companies?
Yes, as part of our suite of services, we do help our companies in terms of searching for independent non-executive directors. By doing so, also just providing and coordinating the interview process, the selection, even looking at maybe just looking around in the industry in terms of what expertise is it that we are looking for. With regards to also the boards, and saying to them, because we also do board assessments as well and evaluations, where we would be also informed in terms of what skills are needed within the board, and then go out and facilitate the board getting those skills that are needed. So
by advertising and so on?
Yes, either by advertising or because it's at that level, we are looking for also a certain skill. You can also do direct appointments, of which you would have sought.
I mean, headhunting.
Yes, headhunting. So it's quite an interesting platform. Actually, you get to meet a lot of people. So as Wise Leadership, that's also one of the things that we provide. We are getting to see what the market has for us. The skills that are out there and the expertise that are out there.
Okay. Now, let's talk COVID, because we're in the middle of it, whether we like it or not. It's always almost like an elephant in the room. I have a two-part question. One, how has it affected Wise Leadership in particular? And B, or two, how has it affected the industry as a whole?
Yes, COVID has affected Wise Leadership, I would say positively, though as we all know, all of us, when this COVID thing started, we were running helter-skelter. We were not ready. We needed to put in the digital platforms for meetings. So positively, because we had to step up. We had to step up and meet the demands of our clients, and also help our clients as well as helping ourselves to float in this overwhelming environment at the same time. And move from the usual way of doing things that we were used to, having physical meetings, preparing physical board packs, and so on. And 1 year on, or 1.5 years on now, we have been servicing companies and we haven't even met yet with the directors. The last time I saw them was 1 year ago. And at some point you just want to see that face and converse. But this is where we are, and positively so, because we have managed to ride the turbulence and provide. There hasn't been any interruption whatsoever in terms of providing the services that we needed to provide. And also there's just the rising of those services of corporate governance and corporate secretariship, especially at this time. Companies need to align and to make sure that their businesses are in the right hands. For Botswana, yes, we needed to immediately move from that space as well of being relaxed to finding platforms and programs that we can work with.
Yes, it was digital.
Yes, going digital and being challenged also to try to do business this digital way. And yes, there has been challenges here and there, but from my perspective, from where I'm sitting, I would say that most of the businesses transitioned well. Sadly, yes, there are some that lost businesses. But in terms of transition in the right path, most businesses have transitioned well. And generally, the language now is that, are we going to go back to the old normal, because now we have a new normal? And people are thinking probably a hybrid, whereby as a human being, the human nature would want to contact the other human. But then more so now, you are not going to have companies who have meetings quarterly, physical meetings. There's the cutting of costs, which is beneficial.
How would that look like? How would that hybrid system work?
The hybrid system, maybe intermittent or contact, whereby it's scheduled like meetings now, once quarter physical, the other quarter not so physical, digital. And because people do miss the interaction at the same time. And then the offices as well, people are saying we are not now going to go back to full occupancy. We probably are going to cut down on the occupancy and start maybe working shifts from home. At the same time, maintaining the teamwork, because teamwork really needs people to actually sit around the table together at some point and interact. We need to learn people. We are recruiting new people every day. Are they going to be recruited and stay home and not even know the culture of the organization? So those are the challenges that COVID has brought. And yes, also the step up and the need to now companies to protect themselves, their businesses in the cyber world, because now business is done there.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one about companies. I read somewhere that CNN and Fox News are compelling their employees to test for COVID, alternatively to produce vaccine certificates to show that they've been vaccinated. What are the implications of this from a corporate governance standpoint, and is it something that's likely to happen in Botswana?
I'm not so sure how far Botswana is in terms of, or what they're thinking at this point. But I see the conversation is going on around the world, and I believe in Botswana as well, probably. It's an ethical issue at the end of it all. I see there's also opposition that is coming up to say it's invading on people's privacy and on people's liberties as well. In terms of where it is going, I'm not sure yet, because the debate is still out there and still very fresh. People are still testing their feelings in terms of how they would see it.
Does Wise leadership have a position for itself and its employees?
Our position is encourage people to vaccinate. It becomes easier for us to do business and interact. We don't want to kind of like stay away forever from each other. Business suffers at the end of the day when people stay away, but because we need to come together and re-strategize and reformulate our business. So our position is we encourage our employees to vaccinate. We will not obviously...
You're not worried about the conspiracy theories?
No, the conspiracy theories are for the conspirators, or whatever the name that you want to call them. For me, the decision is vaccinate. Conspiracy theories, there are those who can deal with them. For me, I'm a child of God, so I know where I stand. I don't have issues with conspiracies.
Wow, okay, it's a very good answer. There was an event you had the previous month, 18th August. Can you share a little bit about what that event was?
We hosted Professor Mervyn King. Himself, yes. On a topic called Corporate Governance in Botswana, Implementation and Practice. This topic was informed by our experience in the field, in the market. Especially exactly what I've been talking about, to say, are we ready to now implement and practice good corporate governance? So we brought in Professor Mervyn King to provide a perspective in terms of what should we do as Botswana. It was a 1-hour conversation with him, and I still feel that we need to even get more in terms of direction where Botswana is right now. I saw the hunger in the people and the interest in the people in wanting to understand what has to be done in this era that we are in.
So he spoke for what, an hour, 2 hours?
An hour.
Okay, and then there was a Q&A.
Then there was a Q&A.
Okay, so it was a success, was it not?
It was a success, yes.
Okay. It leads me to another question. I have had a guest here, Mr. Kgosietsile of InnoLead, talk about the idea of inviting, I think he said Professor Seligman, to come and help the psyche, with the psyche of in Botswana, where we are too bureaucratic in our outlook, and sometimes we allow things like Tsele to block progress, and he saw the need for a paradigm shift in the way that government does things and the way people do things. What is your take on that? Do we need a paradigm shift? Do you think people like Professor King and Professor Seligman can help in terms of achieving that shift?
We do need a paradigm shift, and I do acknowledge, yes, bureaucracy can actually stall initiatives, but we need a leadership which can be able to step up beyond the bureaucracy, try to find a way in which initiatives will be implemented without being, being bottlenecked at the same time. We understand there's law, we understand there's process, but then there's also that agency to step up and step onto the international platform. So probably sometimes we do that, but we do it on a slow motion. Hence, it leaves us behind, because we're still thinking, who is this person? Sometimes it's about who is this person. Sometimes it's about where do they come from. For me, the experience is having started the company still as a youth, then what do I bring on the table? So we find that because of age issues, gender issues, we still trying to define people by what we think we know the gender prescribes or the age prescribes. But I feel that youth should be given a chance, at least given a chance to be heard out. They are coming up vibrant, there should be women and men sitting at the table together, because there are different mindsets coming from women, different mindset coming from men. Coming together is a dynamic. I mean, it leads to greater things. And leadership at the top then should be able to consider those, especially in and I'm going to say this, in SOEs, where they would say, we want
state-owned enterprises.
Yes. Where they would say, we wish we could have the people that we need on the table as the directors. However, the statutory requirements say something else in terms of who should be appointed. So it's obvious, at that point, it's obviously a challenge to the growth of that entity. So then you want people who are interested in the growth. We are talking about reduced subventions now from government. So the people at the top should be the people that you would want to lead the SOEs into sustainability, business sustainability, being able to get their own monies if they are in an area where they can get their own monies. So yes, I would agree that we need to have that shift.
Yeah, it seems as if the government recognized that, and the wording they used is reset. I think some months ago, around March, the president gave a speech on the fact that we more or less been stuck for 30 years, and there's need for a change in mindset. And after that, he brought in somebody that I would describe as an implementation czar in Mr. Boyce Sebetlela to try and shake things up in terms of implementation. I wonder what your thoughts are on that from a corporate governance standpoint.
I would say it's a new thing that we are still seeing and developing. The results are tested at the end or during the implementation. At this point, the president's message is welcome. But then I would also say at the same time to say, I want to see the results. I'm waiting to see the results. If it means that we become part of the process to ensure that the results come in, let the people become part of the process.
You're a little bit skeptical, aren't you?
Pardon?
You're a little bit
No,
skeptical.
I'm not. I'm just saying.
You're practical.
Let the results come out. At this point, it's a start. During the start of a project, there's implementation. During implementation, there are also results that are tangible that are coming out. The message is the right message. So now, the results have to now start trickling in. We don't know how long it will take for the results to start trickling in, but I'm glad that at least Botswana is at that point where it's thinking, let us reset and find a better way of doing things. Yeah.
All right. Wise Leadership is set to relaunch its flagship publication. I think it's called Responsible Citizen.
Yes.
During the course of this month. If you haven't done so already, you've done so already?
Yes, we released the Responsible Citizen magazine in this September.
Oh.
It's a relaunch because we initially flighted it in 2016-17, and it was a print publication. we have revamped the image and you upped the quality and the caliber of stories that we put in there, and have relaunched it in September. It's a corporate social responsibility and corporate governance or social investment magazine.
I wish you had brought a copy.
Yeah, it's a digital copy at this point.
Okay.
So we'll share with you the links to access it. But our Facebook page is quite active. You can follow actually the stories just from the Facebook page. So the Responsible Citizen magazine advocates for the notions that I've talked to. The company being able to integrate the environmental, the social, and the governance issues of the company. Company should be looking at the people, should be looking at the planet and the profit. That's the language now. So we are showcasing those companies and those initiatives that the companies are doing in that platform. Would be eventually be talking to their corporate social responsibility policies and programs in terms of how they are doing, and then the impact. We want to really measure the impact. It's not just about showcasing. We want the impact. We want to build also the statistics. We want to also have it as a go-to research document for any scholar or any business person in the future as we are building it.
Speaking of that, some companies think that building a two-room for a destitute somewhere in Matubudukwane and taking pictures and taking the press there is corporate social responsibility. But I suspect you think it's a lot more than just those snaps and those pictures. It's a lot more than about show off, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a lot more than that, and I hope they won't. They will kill me. But truly, and fairly speaking, CSR is not just about building that two-room, or rather, just donating 10,000 pula
worth of blankets,
or 10,000 pula for a school to do what, or even buying equipment for a school. CSR is beyond. It's a sustainability issue. You're looking at whatever it is that we are doing now. Will the future generations benefit from it? That's sustainability. So for you to achieve sustainability, then you need to set out a program that will have a follow-through, that every other person who comes in can see its beginning and its end, or where it is at that point. So we are still very far, I would say, in terms of developing that. We are not just saying, because we are required to donate, maybe is it 10% of our profit to that, then we are going to do that. It's more than that. It's impacting. The issue is, the word is impact, the word is sustainability. Those are the two ways that needs to be visible.
So how would you advise the companies to go beyond building two rooms? What more should they be doing?
First of all, develop a policy or a program that is firm, that has intention, good intention, and clear goals and objectives as well. That defines impact that you'll be able to measure as the project or the program is being implemented. You want to have something, for example, if you are maybe talking to leadership, one of your objectives is leadership. You want to have a program that will eventually show results. We want to see the people whom you have put into the program actually being recognized and not just being recognized, and also contributing towards the leadership spectrum of the nation. You want to have an environment that shows that people care about it. We want to, as much as we get so much from the environment, we have to also implement programs that will be able to cultivate the environment, like plant more trees, be intentional about such things. You are talking to the climate. You want to also be able to say in your program, you could be saying, yes, we recognize that we do have a fleet of cars and buses, but what are you doing in terms of the CO2 emissions, for example? Do you have a program that can help us, at least as we do our business, also ensure that there is
maybe
clean,
switch to switch to battery operated cars.
Yes, that there is clean air, and Children at school, if you are going to give them computers, is there somebody who's going to teach them? Will there be later be versus to say to check the results if there has been impact? How many children have been impacted by this? What are they doing now? When they go to university, were they able to, to not struggle in terms of being integrated into the system? We are in a digital world now. How are we doing that?
Very, very interesting. Without mentioning names, I would really like you to tell us a little bit about the results that WISE leadership has had. Maybe an example of one or two corporates without necessarily singling them out by name, what you did and the impact you've had specifically. Took them from point A to point B, for instance.
Okay, like I mentioned, yes, that corporate governance is a journey. Our clients span from SOEs, as I've said, NGOs, private and public companies, and also just professional institutions as well. So I would talk to those clients that we probably would have helped in terms of, well, it's both corporate governance and company secretarial. I wanted to split it, but like I said, it's the same thing. They're intertwined. So if you are servicing a board, for example, as a company secretary, we look at stuff like are the processes and the structures there in place to facilitate the board to do their work, and also the management, and are those processes working? If they are not working, then we come in to review those processes and align ourselves, of course, with the codes of corporate governance. And most interestingly, also the continuous monitoring and provision of advisory in the right direction as well, regarding even compliance and risk as well. So we are at a journey whereby we found some companies are not yet open, I would say, open to the idea of we can actually hand this over to somebody else to do. Remember, businesses, the people who are in the business are concerned about the business, as in money. What do we do, operations and what have you. So then we come in with another level to say, while you are looking at your money and your operations and your other things, why don't we look at, give you a backup in terms of your corporate governance culture, the efficiency of your board. So we've done board assessments that have actually given impactful advisory and results, and are being implemented. We, in our preparation and coordination of board meetings and board reports, yes, contributed towards the improvement of those reports and just the way the meetings go, because the meetings are critical. So generally, advisory on a day-to-day basis is what we do, and we see the results.
So you're not going to single anybody out without mentioning names. I got this one from point A to point B. You don't want to blow your trumpet.
Not necessarily that, but because if I single this, if I say a board assessment, should I say an SOE or a company? I mean, because that's what we do for all of them. Like I said earlier, when I think I singled out one in terms of SOEs to say, we are now looking at, do we just appoint the people who are really required by statutory, or can we influence or advocate for the change in legislation for those founding documents or statutory requirements, to have SOEs have directors which would impact them? That's one particular change actually that I can talk to quite freely. Are we just saying, okay, the minister has the power to appoint the people? Can you go to the minister? That's what the question that I've asked. Can you go to the minister and say, Minister, this is where we are in this world. Do you know this is, there's evidence all over. We want to be able to be independent in the sense of revenue creation. We also want to be leaders in terms of what we are doing, not just going around, impactful, not just going around the circle trying to do something, but really not achieving it. So one of those conversations we've had with SOEs would be think about how you can influence without taking away the legislation. But then how can you influence your impact in the industry that you have been assigned to?
Now let's talk about wise leadership in the context of the future. Crystal ball moment, I like to call it, where you think 10, 20, 15 years, what do you see the company developing in terms of the flagship publication, Responsible Citizen? What do you see? What are you projecting for the future?
With the Responsible Citizen, like I said, we are our objective and goals is to have a publication that is what I would call a reference material. Companies want to grow and see how things are done. That should be the publication that they visit. We don't just want to be showcasing people and faces without really impact. So we are looking at advocating and influencing sustainability, advocating and influencing business growth in that aspect. In terms of wise leadership as a whole, we are not looking at, in Botswana, for example, we are growing, I would say, at a very, probably an explosive rate.
Wow. Explain explosive there.
I'm going to explain it because there's high demand for the services now. That's explosive. And two, then we need to be looking at the right resources, the people. People come first to be able to service the demand that is coming. We are also looking at diversifying our services as well. There are other services that kind of complement what we are doing that we will be diversifying into. And yes, Botswana is a small nation. So I believe wise leadership is not only set for Botswana, wise leadership is set for the world. So we are also looking at going outside the borders of Botswana to do what we are doing here and even more.
Okay. In numbers, are you projecting any numbers in terms of the number of maybe corporate professionals that you have, or the size of offices in terms of how many branches? Is it something that you think about 10, 15 years?
The numbers, the people, and the services and departments, I would say, are definitely going to grow. Yes, the size of the office, we want to see ourselves with an office building or block like Mogobe Plaza, definitely with a wise leadership name on it. And of course, that would be also housing other businesses as well. We do a lot of training as well. So we want to be able to have a place where we can easily train and interact with our people. And we would be doing our board inductions, our corporate governance training. We also do train other company secretaries to be better in their fields. There's also a lot more that we are bringing in terms of training. Yes, we are looking at other aspects of training that are not really found in the market at this point. So, yeah, the Responsible Citizen on its own is a Pan-African magazine. So we may be starting now focusing on Botswana, but that's not the focus. The focus is, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Often youngsters want me to ask my guests this simple question. Is there zaga in this profession? Is there money to be made? Is it a profession where you believe youngsters coming out of university should be focusing on considering to divert their skills and attention towards? Is there money?
In this profession, then we are talking consulting, right? Because corporate governance
is vast, yeah.
Yes, it's consulting.
Well, I'm talking about it as a whole.
It's basically, yes. It's a consulting environment and there's money, yes. But in a consulting environment, what I've learned over time is that you build the name first, then the money comes. People buy what they see or know or what they have experienced. So if you want to go into a consulting, it could be anything, whether it's strategy or you want to focus any area of specialty in consulting. It's about the provision and the quality of your services, and also it's attached to your name, your intellectual property. You build your intellectual property first, then you can then get the effects of it. I got an example at some point, just thinking and meditating, asking myself, when are we going to get there as wise leadership? But then what I got is the McKinseys of this world, consultancy firms, the big 5 audit firms, they did not come up in a day. They started a long time, even when we were not even born in 1800. Some of them are 100 years old. But now people go to them because of the name that they have built over time. So in consultancy, it's about the name and the quality of the services. Whereas in products, you can easily test the product then and buy it. But in consultancy, it's about the intellectual property that you have built over time. And yes, then you can comfortably make money.
Okay. Now, this is your chance to ask me a question. I think we've covered most of the ground we wanted to cover.
Okay. I see the brand that you are building. First of all, in the establishment of these conversations, which is something that is quite interesting, and of course have gained a lot of mileage, and of course your establishment in the real estate industry as well. So my question would be, where to next? What are your prospects?
Yeah, I think it's a good question you've asked. The view that I hold is that growth and scaling is very important to us. So we need to maintain what we have in terms of maintaining the momentum, the real estate business, as well as the nuggets or the podcast business, as you say, which we are trying to monetize. The idea is to solidify that and to keep growing. We also focused on Angel Network, Botswana, in terms of investing in startups and mentoring and so on and so forth. So the idea is to continually grow the brand. I think we more or less have the formula that we want to work with, and what we need now is to grow it even continentally. We are contemplating to start something in South Africa, and we're talking to potential partners in Ghana. So the idea of growth is now very much something that we're entertaining. And as we train others who are coming up, because we have a cohort of trainees in terms of people who are attached to us, and in addition to that, I'm mentoring some others. So the idea is that we're constantly looking for talent that we can plug into the system that we have set up to grow the business. I do hope I've answered the question.
Yes, you have. And then maybe just a follow-up, something that I've been thinking quite a lot about. Yes, we are growing real estate, but with reference to our conversation earlier, the effect of COVID-19. Are we looking, if I'm saying, for example, Wise Leadership wants to, at some point, own a building block like Mogobe Plaza, do I have chances there in terms of where's the real estate industry going with reference to the impact of COVID-19?
Yeah.
And
I think the market is beginning to adjust. COVID-19 was a devastating blow. I normally compare it to having a right hook and an uppercut in a boxing match where you are almost flattened. But we're beating the count. I think that as a nation and as an industry, real estate industry, we're beating the count. We're getting up before we are counted out for up to number 10. So my view is that the scope in terms of your ambitions, there's no reason why you can't start working on that. As you know, anything that you focus on, anything that you plan on and empower yourself on, you normally realize if you stick to it. So I think your goal of setting up a headquarters and building is a good goal, but start the baby steps. Start looking for a location you want to purchase, for instance. Start looking for mentors who might influence you. Start reading the books and just keep at it. It's about consistency. It's about dogged determination. If you are determined, you'll get there. So good luck to you, Ma. I'd like you to look at that camera now and give us your parting sentiments in terms of general advice for the viewers at home, in terms of words of encouragement and inspiration.
Viewers at home and online, and the youth, I think I would also want to speak to the youth at this point as well. Be encouraged in knowing that dreams do come true. Not only do you dream and sit, but you also dream and act. You have to act in faith in terms of what you believe in. You also have to be considering what the market really needs at the critical time that you are setting up your business. So I want to say that yes, we are experiencing the impact of COVID-19, most of it being negative, but I just want to challenge you to step out of that misery and think ahead. Nothing stays constant for a long time. Something good is coming, and Botswana is waiting for people like you and to learn from, to grow. We need to make our mark as nationals of Botswana on the international platform. Our businesses need to be recognized. We need to be able to supply the world as much as a nation, as small a nation as we are in Botswana. We are more than capable to think and provide the world with services, provide the world with products, and provide the world with food that we can even produce from our own country. So really, a step of faith is critical for each and every one of us. And of course, the mentoring that we see or we need from those who have gone ahead of us is also quite critical. And the development and the connection, the development of relationships and so on. And from me, my trust in God. So I do trust God, and I do trust Him to be directing me in the right direction and trajectory. So that's my experience, and that's what I would like to share with you today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was beautiful. But now, how do they get in touch with you, and also about the magazine? Can you give the contact details? Yes.
The Responsible Citizen magazine and Wise Leadership may be contacted at 7332 9959. That is the mobile number. Also on WhatsApp. We have Facebook pages separately for these two. There's the Wise Leadership page and then the Responsible Citizen page. Also on Instagram, also on Twitter, and on LinkedIn as well. Where you would see highlights of events that are happening, where we provide information. If you want to learn something, information, services that are coming up, trainings that are coming up. So this is where we are. You can also visit our website, www.wiseleadership.co.bw, where you will get more information as well.
Thank you very much. You've been a wonderful guest. Thank you for sharing so liberally and generously.
Thank you.
So much.